Hey friends! So I have been thinking recently about how my novel Wild River, which is in development right now and which I will publish probably in January, how it would be categorized as it's definitely fantasy, but how it would be categorized beyond that. I was kind of I made a post about it in a fantasy group and talked about it a bit and what my concerns were, and some of the group members suggested that maybe it was Grimdark, and that kind of wasn't sure if I agreed with that. So I went and I read a little bit more about how grimdark is defined, and of course the term grimdark was coined in relation to Warhammer 40k, which is absolutely a very grimdark setting. I really don't think that my story meets the requirements of grimdark, but I'm gonna run through some of those that, and of course some people have defined it in different ways, and sometimes those definitions kind of contradict each other a little bit. But here's some things that people have said about grimdark. Like, for example, one writer said that in grimdark, no one is honorable, not truly honorable. Might is right. It's about power. It's very cynical in that sense. And I don't think that that's true at all for my story. My story is not a might is right story at all. Now see, and someone else said realism and flawed heroes. That definitely, I think, works with my story, even though it's a fantasy story. I try to make my setting and my characters feel very real. Like, these are people that could really exist. Aside from the certain magical elements in the story, everything else about it is very believable. So in that sense, yeah, it does meet grimdark. Also, a general sense of cynicism, especially in politics and in social frameworks. Again, my story, Wild River, does have that. There is a certain cynicism when it comes to politics and social frameworks. And there's a lot of criticism of similar things happening in that world that are happening or have happened in this world. Not just using symbols of one thing to talk about something else, but actually talking about the thing. Like slavery, for example. I talk about slavery and indentured servitude a lot in Wild River. So in that sense, yeah, it does check off that box. But also there are very difficult moral questions in Grimdark. One writer said that in Grimdark, the characters are just as lost as we are. They often don't know what's right. Maybe they're trying to do what's right, but it's not really clear what they should do. And I think that kind of applies to my story, but not always. Like, some of my characters have a very strong sense of right and wrong, and they're just constantly pursuing that. They're just not entirely sure exactly how to implement that, but they do have a very strong sense of right and wrong. Also, moral struggles are more important than other struggles. Again, Wild River checks that box. I would say that, yeah, I'm more concerned with the struggles going on inside the characters than with the struggles going on in the world. Even though there are huge struggles going on in this world, there's violence, there's political posturing and stuff like that. But yeah, the most important struggles are the moral struggles of the characters. Then you have nihilism and a grand sense of futility. Nothing really matters. That's something that people have associated with grimdark. Nihilism and futility. And that is completely antithetical to me and to anything that I would write. I am not a nihilist. I do not believe in this sense of futility in life. So I don't agree with that at all. So it doesn't check that box, not at all. Some people have described grimdark as anti-Tolkien for a lot of the reasons here, because fundamentally Tolkien, like, he was cynical in the sense, like, the ring symbolizes, as he says, the machine. That is the machine of the world, the machine of society, or political power, things like that. And in that sense, he was very cynical, but still he had many characters who are just fundamentally good. And there's still this sense of goodness and rightness. It's just a question of whether or not the characters are brave enough or wise enough to adhere to that. So in that sense, yeah, I'm not anti-Tolkien. I'm definitely more in line with Tolkien than not on that sense. I think that the main difference I would have with Tolkien is that I'm more willing for my characters, my protagonists, my heroes, to get their hands a little dirty and to make mistakes. With Tolkien, I mean, like, you have Frodo being corrupted by the ring and stuff like that. Galadriel's tempted by the ring, but it's not really that serious. Whereas my characters, even though they're good, they some of them have done terrible things, and they have to deal with that. And part of the story is them coming to a realization of the terrible things that they've done. So in reading about this, I came across an interesting term. There's a writer named Derek B. Miller who coined the term Hopepunk as something that's kind of similar to Grimdark, but still fundamentally different. And he described Hopepunk as stories that free the soul from darkness. That necessitates situating the characters and action in a dark world and then directing the drama and activity toward the light. I think a great example of this would be The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Of course, that's technically sci-fi, but I think that's a very good example of this. And it's, I wouldn't say that Dostoevsky would be Hopepunk, but that general feeling of putting you in the characters in these terrible circumstances, but then directing attention toward the light. I think that's central to Dostoevsky, and I love Dostoevsky. And he has deeply influenced my writing. So yeah, I think I would say that my story definitely has some grimdark aspects, but I think that someone who is looking for grimdark probably would not like my story so much, would be disappointed, because in the end I don't think it's cynical or nihilistic enough to be grimdark. I do think that it probably meets the requirements to be Hopepunk. Yeah, I think that Wild River does count as a Hopepunk story. So, if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, cool. I'm going to be releasing the novel in the weeks ahead. Follow my channel. I'll keep you updated. Also, I'm working on a prequel novella that I'm going to release first. So, follow me to get more updates on that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.